I'd like to call to order the regular council meeting of Tuesday, February the 23rd. As always, we are pleased to be here today on the traditional territory of Treaty 6. We acknowledge all those who share a deep connection with this land. The City of Beaumont respects the histories, languages, and cultures of all of Canada's First Peoples, whether they be of First Nation, Métis, or Inuit descent, and appreciates that their presence continues to enrich Canada's vibrant communities. We are all treaty people. Just as we get going today, we have two proclamations to start the meeting off. The first is Bullying Awareness Day, Pink Shirt Day, on February 24th, 2021. Whereas Bullying Awareness Day, Pink Shirt Day highlights Beaumont's commitment to a safe and inclusive community, and whereas acts of bullying, cyberbullying, harassment, intimidation, and violence have a profound effect on an individual's feelings of safety, self-worth, and ability to learn, and are unacceptable in a safe, caring, and orderly society. And whereas communities, workplaces, families, schools, and individuals all have a critical role to play in modeling, teaching, and promoting socially responsible behavior. And whereas Bullying Awareness Day, or Pink Shirt Day, is an opportunity to actively promote respectful and kind behavior and to celebrate the actions of individuals, schools, and groups to address bullying. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Mayor John Stewart, do hereby proclaim February 24, 2021 as Bullying Awareness Day, Pink Shirt Day, in the City of Beaumont, Alberta, dated this 20th day of January, 2021. As well, we have International Women's Day, which is coming on March the 8th, 2021. Whereas the United Nations began observing International Women's Day in 1975 during International Women's Week, and whereas in Canada, women make up more than half of our population, and there is a necessity to raise awareness about the need for women and young girls of the world to have equitable opportunities in employment and education. And whereas in Beaumont, we recognize the contributions of women to our community as entrepreneurs, decision makers, employees, and citizens. And whereas we call attention to their ability and willingness to contribute to Canada's economic, political, and social communities. And whereas for many among us, our future depends on the success of women in our community. And whereas it is appropriate to recognize the value of the accomplishments of women in our community. Therefore, be it resolved that I, Mayor John Stewart, do hereby proclaim March 8th, 2021 is International Women's Day in the City of Beaumont, dated this 23rd day of February, 2021. Appreciate that as we get going. All right, so next on the business is adoption of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda, Ms. Winter?
Thank you, Your Worship. Administration has no additions to the agenda this evening. Thank you.
Can I get a motion from a member of council to adopt the agenda as presented? Councillor Hendricks.
So moved, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Good for Kathy. That carries unanimously. Consent agenda. We have only two items on the consent agenda tonight. I move that council consent to approve the following agenda items without debate. Item 5A, regular council meeting minutes of February the 9th, and item 5B, committee of the whole meeting minutes of February 16th, 2021. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? That carries unanimously. Which brings us to the open forum, and we have one member tonight. Ms. Winter, would you please introduce?
Thank you, Your Worship. We have Corey Chase from the Adult Slow Pitch Association, and he's here to speak with council, and I'll just let him into the meeting here.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chase. Welcome to the council meeting this evening. Can you hear us? Oh, connected to audio. And I think you're still on mute. Do you have us?
Yes, there we go.
Welcome to council tonight. Pleased to have you be here, able to present. The floor is yours. Go ahead.
Okay. My name is Corey Chase. I'm the president for the Beaumont Adult Slow Pitch League. I'd like to make a couple of suggestions for the West Recreation area. If the adult slow pitch is going to be using the facilities, that ideally we would like to have the diamonds to be 300 feet. This is standard for all slow pitch diamonds throughout Alberta and Canada. I would like to share my screen right now too, if that was possible.
Sure.
Share. Okay, so this seems to be what the latest design is set for. Whether adult slow pitch is going to use this or not, I do want to make a recommendation that the two 225 diamonds be set adjacent to each other to 50th Ave, and the two bigger diamonds furthest away. This is because more for safety of players and spectators. Majority of hitters in slow pitch and baseball are righties, so they hit the left field. The way it is now, if you're to hit a home run, the ball would end up in this dugout in the second diamond or into the field, where if it's over here, if they were to switch those two, be more right field would then hit that one, and there's less players that bet left-handed, and there'd still be a chance of people getting hit, but it'd be less frequent. It'd be easier to watch out for, I guess. Other than that, it does look like if we were to do that, there would be room to make them to 300 feet too, if need be, the two bigger diamonds. And that is all I have.
Okay. I do appreciate your coming in tonight. I'll be honest, this process is well down the way. I sort of expected the RFP to be out and about. So I don't know if we're able to incorporate those changes at this point or not, but we thank you for your feedback, and we'll take it up with our admin as we go.
Okay. Thank you.
Do members of council have questions for the presenter?
Okay, yeah.
Sorry. Oh, okay. Once again, thanks for coming in tonight. We do appreciate the feedback, and we'll take it and see if we can incorporate it.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. That brings us to the end of open forum. We have no public hearings tonight, which brings us to the registered presentation portion of the evening with Beaumont Minor Football.
Thank you, Your Worship. We have Todd Carwell and Dan McKinnon from the Beaumont Minor Football Association, and I'll just let them into the meeting now.
You. Welcome to the council meeting this evening, Mr. McKinnon and Mr. Carwell. Can you hear us? I think you guys are still both on mute though.
Yeah, we can hear you. Thanks for having us.
Awesome. We appreciate you coming in tonight and seeing a preview on the slide deck, but if you'd like to share your screen or do what you got to do, that'd be great. And otherwise, the floor is yours.
I'll ask Todd to, in a few minutes, Todd shared the screen, and for the time being, I'll just read up until the sports complex. Thanks everyone for having us here this evening. And first of all and foremost, on behalf of the Beaumont Minor Football Association, allow us to formally thank the Beaumont City Council and the administration for the support and approval of the multi-purpose field. Having this field is a great start for us. It's exciting, but unless we have a field house, it's not going to be a practical and productive for those user groups who want to use it. So we're not alone in this venture, but the spirit of our initiative is to support the city in minimizing the delay in having a proper field house. And with our organization volunteering, taking the lead in fundraising, building a field house, and then the spirit of it is to gift this field house to the city of Beaumont in exchange for services. The cost of this building is currently estimated at about $3.5 million, the one that you will see on the screen. This past season has been a difficult time for the Football Association because with the COVID restrictions, we were only allowed to have 75 players from our usual base of 250 players to be on the field. We had to turn away those other players. So it was a little bit disappointing for them. And we want to, the process of our goal here is to accelerate in providing hope, not only to these citizens, but also to the future citizens of Beaumont who will benefit from the service. Todd, if you could share the screen for the sports complex, please.
Can everyone see that?
Yep, we got it.
Okay, perfect.
So ladies and gentlemen of the council, here's the proposed sports complex. If you could just show the building itself. So on the field here, you can see this is the sports complex we're looking for. Just back it up to one, please. Thank you. The location of the field will be in this corner right here, this quadrant. And again, before I get on to the whole process, this has been a joint effort between the Beaumont football team, the Black and Gold School Division, and also the Parks and Recreation of Beaumont. So collectively, we've all come up with the location and the ideal placement of this building and the layout and the must-have needs for the design of this building. So let me provide you with a brief summary of what this building will look like. Todd, if you could step it up, please. Thank you. So this floor plan, again, is the result of everybody's efforts, and it's going to be an energy efficient building. It's going to be engineered with straight columns and steel structure, point loaded on piles and reinforced with a concrete monolithic slab. Just going to give you the background on the technical side, then I'll give you the layman's terms. The exterior steel columns of the building will be infilled with wood where the national provincial building code allows. Otherwise, it'll be all steel. The second floor will be a reinforced concrete slab, and the stairs will be steel with concrete filled steel pans. The exterior surface will be with EIFS, which is an acrylic stucco, and the roof will be a 24 gauge metal hidden fastener roof assembly. Again, we'll comply with the rules of the Beaumont permitting departments of the Planning and Development Division, but at the same time, I want to assure you that you're all thinking right now that you've experienced these previous initiatives of different groups. And we're not here to discredit the other groups, but with your permission, I'll share your organization. And from the get-go, it's an experienced organization in the area of construction, fundraising, and development. It's a nonprofit, a not-for-profit incorporation, and it's formed of entrepreneurs, business resources, and professionals. We have a legal development lawyer on staff. We have a professional fundraiser who, for the past 15 years, has successfully raised money for the Children's Cancer Society. So we have experience in that area of fundraising and with the different associations. Project managers, we have over 60 years of combined experience in construction of large commercial and industrial projects with a background in ground-up construction of buildings, construction contracts, managing change orders, scheduling with the history of repurposing and upgrading the $200 million project for Commonwealth Stadium and other commercial site development and large multi-family projects. So we have a background in this area. We're not going in there as a novice. Our builder is a locally owned company. It's Belvan Construction with their own in-house engineers and a history of ground-up building projects as well. The project is being managed in the same fashion one builds a condominium high-rise. We're not putting any shovels in until we get all the money. So there's not going to be a mess or something unfinished at the end of the project. Our purpose of this presentation today is to request a formalized document, a memorandum of understanding between the City of Beaumont, its partners Black and Gold, and the Beaumont Minor Football Association for the following reasons. Beaumont Football Association will work with the city to develop an MOU to coordinate fundraising efforts and obtain necessary city inputs and approvals. We will also take the necessary steps to have the field house added to the City Council approved list of city priorities. We will not launch a fundraising campaign for this field house without first obtaining a formal approval from the city to proceed. We have undertaken this building with more of a sense of urgency than focusing on a traditional 5-year timeframe. The major gift strategy is our initiative, and it's our strategy, and it's the least expensive strategy to build. Budgets includes investment to help other sports benefits from this public engagement. Infrastructure for the field house should be done, excuse me, simultaneously with the installation of the new multi-purpose field. Any money saved from the project on the multi-purpose field, we ask that it be carried over to support the building of the field house if it's available. Beaumont Football Association, with its lawyer and current leadership, is working on how to accept, manage the philanthropic gifts. And this is associated with the concerns about permanent leadership due to governmental elections or government budget cuts or change in our leadership. We only want to provide the field house and wish to avoid duplicating the infrastructure process. The spirit of this relationship is such that the parties will collectively work as a partnership in the spirit of simultaneously preparing the facilities for both the multipurpose field and the second part of the field house, including but not limited to maximizing the design of the infrastructure, utilities, drainage, access wherever such mutual benefit permits. Once the MU is formalized, we can proceed with this fundraising campaign. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. We do appreciate your coming in tonight and presenting this project to us. It presents some intriguing possibilities. But I'll open it up to members of council if they have questions for the presenters this evening. Councillor Montgomery.
Yeah, thanks, your worship. Dan and Todd, appreciate you coming and giving us this update. Very exciting and great to see the energy that your association is coming at with this. I wanted to ask a question just around the timing, and obviously you've indicated that the capital cost here is around $3.5 million. But what you said in the presentation, and I just want to make sure I heard it right, was as we build the multi-use sports field, you want to capitalize on the fact that we've got all that equipment out there, and you'd like us to essentially get the later foundations, etc., for the future field house. So could you just help me understand that you also said you're not going to go ahead and do this until you're fully fundraised at all? So I'm not quite sure around the timing of how that works. So how would you plan on getting the fundraising done in that time, or you just want us to help facilitate that field house over the next year? I'm just curious on how you reconcile those time differences.
Okay, first let me define what the infrastructure means. When you're going to be building the field, you're going to have to put in drainage, which is surface water management. You're going to have to also put in utilities for the lights. All of the, so the drainage, the water, all of those utilities and infrastructures are required for the field. What usually happens in an initiative where someone builds one project and comes in with a second project, you end up digging it up again to add in for the additional infrastructure. We want to avoid duplication of effort. We want to avoid done twice construction. So in the timelines that this field is being designed right now, we ask that the architect or the civil engineer take into consideration there's going to be a facility that's going to be 8,000 square feet. It's going to have a roof that's going to provide so much water runoff that will have to be addressed by the infrastructure they have in place or planning to put in place, which will be catch basins or whatever runoff that's going to be required for that. And then the tie-ins for the drainage, now that we've agreed to, or tentatively agreed to where the placement of this building would be, that the tie-ins would be for the drainage. So the sanitary drains, the water supply for that building are close enough so that when we build the building, because that's what we want to do is provide the building, and we can tie into it easily without doing any additional damage or costing any more time to the current community or user groups in that area. So that's what that means as far as definition of infrastructure. As far as timeline, our estimate is it could take a year, it could take a year and a half. We have a strategy where we're looking to get a government grant for a certain amount of money. We have a target group of people and foundations that we're approaching for the rest of the money. And because of the grant, we're restricted on the time where we have to, once we receive that grant, exercise that grant, or we lose the right to that grant. So the timeline is capped, and we're trying to manage it within that time frame. But we like to minimize the risk by your support or the city support in the development of this multi-purpose field and not duplicating the effort as far as the infrastructure and facilities.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. And that makes sense in terms of not wanting to duplicate the work there. I was just, that obviously would add some additional steps for us when we're going to do that. And so while the commitment and the goal that you guys have is admirable and very, very exciting, I'll share, that's not a done deal. So if we were to lay in that additional infrastructure, that has some potential additional costs. So that's all I was trying to get an understanding of is, if we're committed to this and the partnership, if that's where we end up going, I imagine we'll need a motion here tonight to direct and give you that letter of support that you need. So for me, I just wanted to understand a bit more around the timing, but certainly appreciate what you and your organization is trying to do and the expertise that you bring to that. So yeah, that's all the questions and comments I had now, Your Worship. So I'll yield the floor. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Van Newkirk, followed by Councillor Barnhart.
Yeah, thanks, Dan and Todd, for coming in tonight and chatting. I just wanted to slow down on the MOU part of things, Dan, for a second. How you or what you envisioned and what you actually needed. So the MOU would be between the city, Black Gold, and Beaumont Minor Football. Is that correct?
No, my understanding in talking with other members of your team is that the MOU would be between us and the city. The city already has an arrangement and a relationship with the Black Gold where it addresses those needs. We just need to make sure that all parties are informed as to what role that relationship will play.
Okay, and the MOU, what would that MOU state? Like, what would the purpose of that be? Just help me understand that.
Well, it states the roles and responsibilities that we undertake. It'll state the roles and responsibilities that the city as our partners in regards to supporting us with the infrastructure would take. It would address the understandings of what we have to comply with as far as your permits, your rules, and also what we have to do with the monies so that we're protecting the people that are fundraising with us. It captures the whole story of what our relationship is going to be and our obligations.
Okay, no, that's very good. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that there was some more clarity around that because, should things move forward, we'll need to, again, I'm presuming a motion would be required to do that. So thank you, Mayor, whoever's next.
Yeah, we'll catch a motion at the end of this. Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you very much, Mayor, and thank you, gentlemen, for the presentation and all the hard work that's obviously yourself and your teams have put into getting this to this stage. It's a tremendous amount of work, and it's very well appreciated by me and I'm sure other members of council. I'm hoping that you could just give me a little more clarity on the major gift strategy. I think you're talking about foundations and grants, but I wonder if you could expand on that a little bit more, Mr. McKinnon, and tell me what you mean by that.
Well, that's exactly right, Kathy. We have different foundations that support different communities, and our fundraiser expert and resource that has pointed us in the direction of different foundations that will support us. And the idea is we don't want to be the onesies and twosies, the small groups. We want to go in and get, if possible, the bigger target groups that are prepared and recognize these kind of events and that will support us so that we can get a quicker timeline. It's our experience in the past where you have these major gift contributions where the success rate and the timeline is accelerated much more effectively than the onesies and twosies.
Is it your expectation, Mr. McKinnon, that there wouldn't be any additional funds required by the city of Beaumont other than building the field house, and any additional surplus you're saying could go towards that, towards the field house after the field is developed, but you're not looking for any additional grants from the city of Beaumont?
No, the intention right now is, and the number we came up with was a manageable number from our perspective. I mean, we haven't started anything yet because we don't have the authority to proceed. In the event that we come short, $150,000 to $200,000, and depending on the timeline, we'd like to reserve the right to circle back and see if there are other avenues, but it's not our intention at this point in time.
Thank you very much, and good luck with everything.
Thank you.
Councillor Danlick.
Thank you, Mayor Stewart. Thank you, gentlemen, for the presentation. I have a couple of questions, if you don't mind. The first question revolves around the presentation. You have a bit of a diagram of the interior of the main floor. If I could have you guys just refer to that just for a moment, if you could. I know we're talking about football as being the primary user of the field house for obvious reasons, but you mentioned other user groups may have use of the field. Would they have some use of the actual facility itself? I see a number of storage rooms and so on. Can you expand on your anticipation of other user groups having some access to the field house in terms of storage and use of the facility during their use time on the field itself, please, is my first question. Thank you.
Yeah, so it turns out to be a joint use facility. It is intended for all the other user groups, so soccer, lacrosse, field hockey. We have committed to the Black and Gold for the dedicated space for the Beaumont Bandits football team. That is a commitment to them, so that's their space exclusively. And then the rest of the facility is available to whoever rents it at that time or needs to or books it for that occasion.
Okay, so to clarify then, this is an initiative put out by Beaumont Minor Football, but you are anticipating that other user groups who may not be part of the process here will have access to the field house once it's gifted to the city, is your anticipation. As
Yeah.
part of the MOU is my understanding. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the spirit of this whole relationship is that we're helping accelerate the process of getting a field house for the community, of which we'd like to have some preferential treatment for in exchange for services. But no, it's designed for the community, not just exclusively for football.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to clarify that point. I do think it's a very important point that it's not just for football. It will be other user groups as well, such as rugby, soccer, and so on, perhaps even rugby, as I mentioned a moment ago, so field hockey. My last question is, if I could, Mayor Stewart, is on the fundraising. I'm very impressed. You are using a dedicated professional fundraiser. Can you tell me a little bit about what you anticipate that campaign may look like in terms of how many people will be involved, or is a one-person dedicated fundraising chairman of your committee, please? Just some idea on how you plan on doing the fundraising.
So,
Especially this evening.
yeah, so at this point in time, until we get the official authorization to proceed, it's only a strategy. But at this point in time, the organization has this person as the chair and the head of all the fundraisers, and it'll be dependent on how many we have. We have a list of about 400 candidates that we're targeting. It's going to be narrowed down to something that's more tangible given today's economy, of course. But that was a going in position, and this fundraiser will direct and build the subgroups that'll target these areas. Our other challenges are, and this is what the lawyer is going to provide us, is how we manage those funds. We put them in escrow so that in the event something happens or gets canceled, people get their money back. All those fallback positions that need to be taken into consideration through the process. So there's a plan, there is an initiative. There are professionals that are managing this for us. So again, we're going under their guidelines and their leadership in those areas.
Thanks, Dan, for explaining. Because in my interpretation is you guys already have thought this out quite well in terms of implication of fundraising and implication things don't go forward, those sort of things. So thank you for that presentation. And I'll yield the floor now, Mayor Stewart, before motions put forward, which I'll do when you're ready to hear one. We can talk about that in a few minutes. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate that. I have a couple questions for the presenters that didn't get covered by the members of council. Thank you very much. It's been a great presentation. And then I got a couple for admin before we get into a motion. So my question is I have two concerns. One is timeline. We're trying to get an RFP out the door to tender, and I'm not sure if this will slow us down. The other one is budget. What we're finding is our budgets that we put in for construction are kind of tight. If there is extra money needed for the extra tie-ins and the underground servicing that's required for this field house, does the BMBA have funds that they can put towards that at this point?
It's not something that we envisioned, and primarily because at some point there was going to be a field house in that area. So my understanding, the normal development planning is that we carry those connectivities in the plan. So if I'm understanding correctly, this hasn't been undertaken by your team?
I'm not sure. That's actually one of the questions I got for administration after this.
Okay, because in our conversations with the team, we've mentioned that. So it's not a surprise to anybody that that's the plan or the path we're taking. To answer your question, if we have to, then we will. But again, it's another question of duplicating the effort.
Okay. So I'm going to ask the CAO, where are we sitting with this project currently? Timeline and whatnot.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Stewart. I'm going to ask Ms. Darge if she could weigh in.
Thank you, Mayor Stewart. So the project is scheduled for estimated completion date of October 31st of this year. We're going out to tender for construction on this project. I'm not the project sponsor on this. However, I'm working with the project manager quite closely. And I don't know that we would be able to, with the timelines, those timelines, now go back and include engineering work for a field house into the design that needs to go out for tender. If we don't tender it soon enough, we may not be able to complete construction within the time schedule that we have allocated for this project.
And when's
Can I ask you a question?
One sec. When's it going to tender?
I don't have those details. I'm not, unfortunately, as I said, I'm not the project sponsor, so I don't have those specific details.
Okay.
Can I just weigh in? Ms.
Yeah,
Darge?
CEO, go ahead.
So we're sending this out for engineering. We are not including tie-ins for the field house, I'm going to assume. I don't recall that being in the scope, so I just want to clarify that. That would be a change order. Okay.
Okay, so we could do it by change order if we had to. Mr. McKinney, you had a question?
Yeah, I was going to ask you, so when was the scope of work established?
Well,
My understanding, sorry, if I may take that. My understanding
Right.
is that the scope of work was established as part of the budget process as to what was included within that.
Okay. So our concern is we don't want to overload your catch basins with a building. That's an infrastructure issue. And we've shared that comment and that request through our discussions. So I'd like to think that maybe that has been addressed. Maybe you're not aware of it.
it's definitely something we should look into, because I know that council, when we approved this project, we didn't approve anything to do with the field house portion, just the field, the bleachers, the lights, score and the rest of it. So yeah, that's a question we'll have to take back, and the CEO we'll have to dig that answer up and see, because you're right, there was always a future plan, because we had talked to you guys in the past, this might be coming, and it's a great project, but it's outside the scope of our current budgetary process.
Thank you for that. I just want to encourage the fact that if it's salvageable at this point, that we can consider it, because again, it's just something that's going to be limited again and has to be redone whenever we get to that point of harmonizing the building with the infrastructure.
Yeah, I think it's worth taking a look at, and I see the CAO sort of nodding at me. So it's definitely something that worth taking a look at. Because yeah, I'm like you, I don't like to do things twice. My background's construction. I hated doing things twice.
Exactly. Thank
Councilor
you for
Hendricks?
your time.
Your worship, thank you. And just with the knowledge that I have of the Four Seasons Park initial design and construction, it seems to me that stormwater management would be taken overland. I think most of it was done as an overland drainage scope. So I don't think we'll have any stormwater management issues relative to sanitary and certainly to the power utilities and perhaps some running gas and what have you. Everything comes from the north on the school side. So what we're doing on the field is of course to the south. So we should be able to make it all work without a whole lot of complications. It's a fairly simple structure, and it's a fairly simple ask in terms of utilities. So thanks.
So we'll leave that. Thank you, Councilor Hendricks. Great information. So we'll leave that with administration to dig into a little bit more surrounding that. I think the next step, though, if we want to move this project forward, and I think we do, is I will make a motion to direct our administration to work with the BMBA to formalize an MOU to move the project forward, and then that'll set the framework for whatever we need to do in terms of design, engineering, blah, 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 and get it all done. And then to bring it back to the council for approval. Like honestly, I love it when community groups partner with us. It's awesome. This is another example of the Beaumont Minor Ball. We're potentially partnering with them for a Diamond in the West. We partnered with Baja to get the outdoor rink going at the Ken Nickel. This is another great example of great collaboration within our community, and I'm looking forward to it. So I will make the motion that we move forward on the MOU to start the process on getting this project moving forward, and we'll go from there. Discussion on the motion. Councilor Montgomery.
Yeah, thanks. So forgive me if I bring up some other projects, but and I'll speak to this motion, but you know, we've got ourselves in a bit of trouble with lack of clarity around communication and timelines with some other projects. So I don't know enough right now about, you know, right now we just kind of loose, it seems the motion, the way it's crafted, is just loosely directing administration. What we're hearing from the presenters is that if we want to do this, we need to get this, we need to get the tie-ins and stuff done that needs to be part of that RFP package. So I understand that we don't have an answer yet as to when that goes out or whether that's included or not. I understand we don't have that tonight, but I would like a bit more clarity from administration about what their next steps are going to do as part of this and when, so that we can ultimately make a decision. It's one thing to talk about an MOU that talks about down the road, but if we're looking to get in the ground and we haven't got the RFP out yet, I'd like to understand those tangible steps from administration around how we can how and when we're going to be able to potentially get this question addressed and see if we can include this. So, but before my vote, I'd just like to understand that from the administration, please.
Theo, Mr. Sturgey?
And I'll let Ms. Darge add anything here. What I would suggest is the MOU may be a little bit premature. What we will do immediately is look at how this will impact the project. And now that could be timeline, it could be cost. We don't know any of those answers, but once we get those answers, then my suggestion is we would bring that back to council and see if there's a desire to proceed. It is going to affect one of those two things, if not both.
Agreed. Thank you. Agreed. And so I just want to make sure that we're all we have all the information before we're making a decision. Generally, I'd love to see this come forward, but I want to make sure that it's realistic and we have the clear timeframes and budget in front of us. In terms of Mike or Joanne, how I don't have the background on this. Like, can we pull this together, like at least get an understanding of where we're at with the RFP and whether those tie-ins and that additional works are included in that? Like, can we pull that back and by the time we meet back at council next week to then potentially move a motion on the MOU? Well, what's the timelines from administration on that?
I can answer that. Mayor Stewart, thank you, Councillor Munkoff-Swain. So I do believe that we should be able to, we have a project manager dedicated to this, we'll be able to provide the time frame, the status, the detailed status of the project and where it's at, and then a high level, I want to say risk assessment, but a high level of how this might impact the project from a timing perspective.
So I'll push a little bit further on that. Sorry. So I heard everything I heard was great except for a timeline. But when do we think that we might be able to get that done by? And the reason why I'm pushing is clearly we want to get in the ground this year, and we don't want to. So I just want to understand where we're at with that.
I apologize for not answering that final part, but we should be able to have that for you for the next council meeting or next week. There is no council meeting next week.
No, there isn't. Well, what about the committee of the whole on March 16th? That's more of an opportunity for us to look at the project scheduling for the entire summer. Like, what's the difference of a week here?
Yeah, bring it then.
Yeah, I'm okay either way. I want to make sure that we're not taking too long to look at this and we potentially miss out a window. But and I think, as you know, Mike, there are going to be some other questions around other construction efforts going on in the city. And if the plan is to bring that back to the committee of the whole, then that makes sense, and it gives us a chance to dive in more and have more of a general discussion around this versus the decision-making meeting of a council meeting, because I'm not sure we're quite at that point yet. So I would be comfortable with that, with the motion talking about bringing back assessment of this for the committee of the whole, provided that I don't think a week is going to make a difference at all in this. But I think what I want to communicate clearly across to both Todd and Dan and the rest of the user groups here is that personally I would like to see this happen, absolutely. But we want to make sure that we've got this timelines nailed down. We've got a clear communication strategy around how we're going to work within the user groups, because this is going to potentially impact timing of seasons and all that sort of stuff. So that would be where I land on this.
Good. Okay, so we await your feedback or any calls you have for us, and we'll wait for you till the 16th.
Hang on, we're not done. Councillor Van Newkirk.
Oh, there's more.
Well, Councillor Van Newkirk's got a comment, and my motion's still on the floor, so this discussion's not over.
Not over yet, yeah. I was going to continue down the road on timing. Councillor Munkoff-Swain hit all of the points that I was going to hit, save one, is that 2 weeks is 2 weeks, and we still don't have RFPs out. We want to get construction done. There's a targeted date of, I believe it was said, the end of October. We have other construction activities that are to go underway that are concurrent and need to be planned alongside. So, I think there has to be a reasonable amount of time given to administration to get this done. But in the same breath, I think we got to move this along as well. So if the 16th is going to be the meeting, then that's fine. But every 2 weeks and every week and every delay is impacting everything for everyone. So, and collectively, everyone wants to get it done, what's approved and get done and get it all across the line. So that's enough on that subject. Thank you.
Councillor Danlock, and I'm going to weigh in with some points here.
Thank you, Mayor Stewart. Just want to echo the previous two councillors' comments in terms of timing. I agree with what they're saying wholeheartedly. At the same time, I very much in favor of this initiative. It's a great idea, and the user groups are going to benefit from this. And Beaumont football is taking the bull by the horns and being proactive, which is great. I think we can get this back by the committee of the whole in March. That'll get the administration enough time to do what they need to do to incorporate into the project properly. So I'm looking forward to the motion momentarily for voting. Thank you very much.
Okay, so weighing in on this, in my mind, this is two separate items. One is if we think this field house is a good idea, we should be moving forward on developing an MOU with the BMBA. They've offered to fund it. They've offered to gift it to the city. I think it's a good project. I think we should not slow down the work on that MOU because we're nervous about the timeline on our field. Now, I'm not saying that we should be slowing down the RFP process on our field, because there's the one thing after 25 years in construction that I do know, that no matter what, as long as you're willing to pay for it, you can pretty much do anything. And so while it's nice to be able to get this in to the construction phase, it can be done as a couple of things, and Councillor Hendricks can back me up here. We can add it as a change order to the contract. We don't have to slow down the RFP process or the current construction. So, and that's sort of where we have to be. And so the MOU is sort of it's going to have to figure it out and do it. So, sorry, I lost my train of thought. I'm reading three things here. So I'm going to leave my motion on the floor because I think we want to proceed and see if this partnership can work out. And then I will make another motion, or I'll ask another member of the motion to direct administration to investigate the feasibility and impacts of adding the necessary utility tie-ins for a potential field house and bring it back to the committee of the whole on March 16th. I think both those motions should pass tonight. So I'm going to open it up for discussion on the motion of moving forward on the MOU with the BMBA. Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you very much, Mayor. And I was thinking something similar to what you just put on the floor, but I'm just wondering if in your motion where you say bring it back to council for approval, might it be softer to say bring it back for consideration? Just in that I'm not ready yet, as Councillor Monkoff-Swain and Councillor Daniluk and Councillor Van Newkirk have said, there's a lot we don't know. And if it impacts the other project, I need to know that before I say absolutely yes. But I'm leaning towards don't delay getting the memorandum of understanding going. If the administration can put the time and effort to that now with the groups, I think we get that going.
Yeah, no, Councillor, I agree with you. I'm sorry I was formatting that one on the fly. But yeah, I sort of envisioned the whole process. It would come back for discussion and other things. So I think I'll change the word. I'll take that as a friendly and change the word approval for consideration.
Thank you, ma'am.
And we can go through the whole process of developing, of getting that done. Further discussion on the motion? Councillor Daniluk.
Thank you, Mayor Stewart. Just to clarify your motion then, motion will allow us to move forward with memo of understanding with administration as soon as possible. Is that what?
Yeah, they're going to start. They'll start on it.
Yeah,
it may take a bit to get it going.
Yeah, I agree.
Councillor Monkoff-Swain.
Yeah, so directionally, I support getting the work done in the background. So thanks for providing that option. I would like you to add a time frame though to your motion. And I'm going to be that guy, but I'd like to get an understanding of, and happy to take administration direction here when they think that might be feasible. But I don't just want that hanging out there. I'd like to have a time frame of when we want to get that MOU brought back to council.
CAO thoughts, Mr. McKinnon, your thoughts? CAO first.
My thought is let's determine the feasibility first. If we come back with something with council that's not going to work, there's not much point in putting resources to put an MOU together. To me, that they shouldn't be done simultaneously because we've only got a limited amount of resources. So let us get the engineering piece done here. And then if it's something that we agree to move forward with, then we can assign the resources to do the MOU.
Okay.
Okay, so appreciate that comment, but not my question. The motion on the floor, when would be an acceptable time to bring this back to council?
Well, along the same line of thinking that I just suggested, if we're coming back March 16th with a feasibility, then I would pick a date after that. Middle of April, end of April. The MOU is going to include a whole bunch of different things, including how's this thing going to operate, who's going to operate it, how much it's going to cost. So all of those details need to be worked out. But if we get a green light that we're going to do the infrastructure, at least, or the underground, then that can proceed. The rest of the MOU can come later.
And I'm good with that. I'm just looking for a date in here, so it's not out there. And if you're saying end of April or last council meeting about April, I'd be curious on Dan and Todd's thoughts on what that means. But that to me that seems reasonable. Putting that time frame in there.
Well, at least an update by the end of April on it. Mr. McKinnon, you had any thoughts on timeline on the development of that from your end?
Development of MOU?
Uh-huh.
We're going to circle back to earlier. We just first of all wanted to make sure that it was a possibility we could do it. I get the sense there is a possibility. There's merit in that statement. So we'll come back to it with some timelines that hopefully we all can manage.
All right.
But it's going to be interesting. The longer we cascade that timeline, the rest of the timeline cascades as well. So we want to make this work for everybody. That's our intention.
Mm-hmm.
So
appreciate that. So I'm not going to put a timeline on the motion just because there's too many moving parts to it, and just give the administration the direction verbally to work it through as reasonable.
Okay. What's the next steps for us? What do you recommend?
Well, we got to see if this motion passes first.
Okay.
And then the next steps, we'll put you in touch with our administration, and then you guys can work it from there. Because they have another couple of steps to bring back to committee of the whole if the next motion passes, which I assume it will. So anyway, this further discussion from members of council. I'm going to close off the question period. Just leave this in the hands of council. Further discussion on the motion on the floor, which is moved by me that council direct administration to work with the Beaumont Minor Football Association to formalize a memorandum of understanding and bring back to council for consideration. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor? If you're against, just click the red button. That carries unanimously. Thank you very much. So we'll leave it in the hands of admin to work out timelines on it all. As it relates to the next motion, is there a member of council willing to move a motion to direct administration to investigate the feasibility and impacts of adding the necessary utility tie-ins for a potential field house and bring it back to the March 16th committee of the whole? Councillor Danlock.
So moved, Your Worship. Thank you for saying that for me. I really appreciate that. So moved.
Thank you very much. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Danlock? Nope. Dropped. And okay, I will post it in the chat for everybody to see, or for the city clerk to pick up on. Seeing no discussion on the motion, all in favor? Okay, I'm not sure the votes were cleared from last time, but one, two, Councillor Stout, Councillor Danlock. Who keeps clearing them? Need the vote. Councillor Barner, Councillor Hendricks, Councillor McGuffin, Councillor Van Newkirk.
Yeah, I voted yes, John. Sorry, my button.
Yeah, I know there's weird things happening with the voting system right now.
I apologize for contributing to that, but here's a yes. Hang on.
But you're in favor? Okay, that carries unanimously.
Yeah.
And we'll go from there. So those are the hopefully that brings a little clarity to what's going on. So the next steps are administration is going to do that investigation, bring it back to committee of the whole. They'll start looking into the MOU in conjunction with the BNBA. And the next update on this will be committee of the whole on March the 16th. Fair enough. CAO, did I muddy your waters?
No, we're good to go. This is an exciting opportunity. Don't get me wrong. I'm just trying to line up all of the scheduling for the summer. That's my only hesitation. We're going to do it. Let's do it right.
I appreciate we want to do it right, but let's not slow down the RFP process on this. We'll move from there. All right, which brings us to item 8A. Thank you very much to the presenters. Appreciate you coming in tonight, and we'll go forward.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Very exciting. Thanks a lot for all the work.
Thank you for your time, everybody. Have a good day.
Thanks, Dan.
Okay.
Thanks, Todd.
Thank you. Which brings us to item 8A, swearing in ceremony for the deputy mayor. We will let Ms. Winter introduce this one.
Thank you, Your Worship. In accordance with Section 152 of the Municipal Government Act, council must appoint one or more of deputy mayors when an appointed term for 8-month rotational basis is what our council decided at the last organizational meeting. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to swear in Councillor Bill Daniluk as deputy mayor to take a term effective for March 1st, 2021 until the 2021 organizational meeting. Due to COVID, obviously, we're not able to do this virtually. So I have a video recording of the swearing in that I'll just play for council now. I, Bill Daniluk,
I, Bill Daniluk,
do swear that I will diligently,
do swear that I will diligently,
faithfully, and to the best of my ability,
faithfully, and the best of my ability,
execute according to law
execute according to law
the office of deputy mayor
the office of deputy mayor
for the city of Beaumont.
for the city of Beaumont
From March 1st, 2021
from March 1st of 2021
until the October 2021
until the October 2021 organizational meeting.
So help me God.
So help me God.
It's bad we can't be doing those in person. It's much better, but that's the best we can do. So at this time, I'd like to congratulate Councillor Daniluk and say welcome, welcome to being the deputy mayor for the last 8 months of the term. I'm sure it'll be a fun and good time. And pleased to have you on board. And I'd also like to take this moment to recognize our outgoing deputy mayor, Councillor Martin Stout, who did an admirable job over the last 8 months, keeping this place running. So well done, Councillor Stout, and appreciate your service, and we'll go on from there. Normally I would traditionally, if Councillor Stout's got a couple things to say, and then we'll open it up to the incoming deputy mayor if he's got a couple words he wants to say. Otherwise, we'll move on to the meeting. Councillor Stout.
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, that was my great pleasure to serve as always. I noticed that my term actually expires on February the 29th as originally appointed. So
yeah, you got another 4 days or whatever it is.
So well, there isn't a February the 29th this year because it's not a leap year.
Oh,
but
oh yeah.
But I think we can all agree that March the 1st comes after February the 29th anyway. So I look forward to passing the torch to Bill, and I'm sure he will just be fantastic in the job. So thank you.
Deputy Mayor Daniluk, incoming.
Thank you, Mayor Stewart. Thank you, Council, for the congratulations on that. I'm looking forward to serving as your deputy mayor for the balance of our term until the fall. If I do half as good a job as all of you did preceding me as deputy mayor, you'll be in good hands if I do half as good a job. So I'm looking forward to following your footsteps. Thank you very much. Let's have a good night. Thank you, John.
Appreciate that. And at that point, we're hitting the hour mark, and as the next item on the agenda is financials, which could be quite lengthy. We're going to call a quick pause to the meeting, take 10. We'll come back here at 7. call the meeting back to order of Tuesday, February the 23rd. Brings us to item 8B, 2020 year-end financial report. I see Mr. DeBlanco is ready to present, so whenever you're ready.
All right. Good evening to the mayor and council. Before you is a financial report for information on the 2020 budget year, similar in presentation to the Q2 and Q3 reports brought forth last year. The figures in the report have not been audited. They're considered preliminary. Many of the values might change due to adjustments made as part of the year-end close process and the external audit. Final audited statements will be brought to council in April after the conclusion of audit fieldwork. So on the operating budget, the third quarter financial report had forecasted an operating surplus of approximately $1 million. Although preliminary, it is expected that at completion of the year-end audit, the 2020 operating surplus will be slightly higher, approximately $1.2 million. As explained as part of the Q3 report, the city received a $1.9 million transfer through the Municipal Operating Support Transfer Program. As part of the year-end, administration is determining the amount of eligible expenditures and/or foregone revenue this grant can be applied to. For the purposes of this report, 1.4 million or 75% or 9 months worth of this grant is reflected in other corporate revenue. As stated in previous quarterly reports, the city has sought to offset any lost revenue by reducing its expenditures. Regardless, in absence of the MOST transfer discussed, administration would have expected of a deficit of approximately $200,000. When the audited financial statements are complete in April, administration will bring forth a recommendation on the transfer of any surplus that aligns with the approved reserve policy. Moving on to the utility budget, the water budget is expected to see a small deficit of $56,000, whereas wastewater and solid waste are expected to have surpluses of $675,000 and $409,000 respectively. Similar to the operating budget, admin will bring forward recommendation for either the surpluses or deficit to be transferred and drawn from the utility reserve as part of the presentation in April. With regards to the reserve balances, there are certain phase-in and contingency draws that were originally budgeted for the 2020 budget that will not be required, cumulatively amounting to approximately $1 million. Similarly, on the capital side, it is expected that $4.4 million will be needed to be drawn from the reserve balances on a budgeted $5.3 million. Overall, the expectation is that reserve balances will be closing at approximately $2 million higher than what was forecast in the 2020 budget. On the capital budget, overall is expected to come in approximately $1 million under budget. Notable underages being the neighborhood renewal program and the Ken Nickel roof repair. As stated previously, the figures in this attachment are preliminary, subject to adjustment as part of the year-end process. Any unspent budgets on capital projects that are still underway as of December 31st are being requested to be carried forward as part of the 2021 capital budget. As just mentioned, attachment 5 provides a list of operating and capital projects that admin is recommending be carried forward to the 2021 year in order for these projects to be completed. The approved 2021 budgets will need to be amended by these amounts so admin can continue with the work. Approving these amendments will not have an impact on the 2021 property tax levy increase. As mentioned earlier, at this time, a $1.2 million operating surplus is being projected. Admin will bring forward recommendations to council in April on how these funds should be utilized. Any recommendations will be informed by council's reserve policy and will involve administration reviewing the balances of all reserves upon completion of the year end and identify the most appropriate reserve for the surplus to be transferred. The projected surplus in utility operations will be transferred to the utility reserve, available to fund future capital and or operating projects. I'm willing to take any questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Blanco. I really do appreciate the presentation tonight. This is a great news story in so many ways because I had visions of large deficits, the most grant notwithstanding, due to the impacts of COVID-19 and the total loss of revenue in all of our transit and rec centers and other things. So really do appreciate the fact that we managed to mitigate it, and even if we didn't get the most grant, that it was going to be a very small deficit. So appreciate that as well. I do appreciate the timeliness of this. I think this is the earliest in lot of years that that council's actually seen this information. So it being February. So thank you once again for getting all this done in a timely manner. And we do recognize that these are subject to adjustments at the end of the year. I do have one question before I open it up to questions on this from members of council, and we'll probably, just to keep it orderly, start with the 5 attachments, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and just keep it logical. The most grant, did we that's largely where our surplus is coming from. Did we expend it all to be able to retain those dollars? I think, didn't we have to like end of March 2021 to expend those?
To the mayor, yes, the deadline to expend the dollars is March 31st. Once again, admin is reviewing what is an eligible expenditure, whether it's in the 2020 year or the 2021 year. It can also apply to things like foregone revenue, which in the case of things like recreation, childcare, among other things, there is ample foregone revenue that this grant can be applied to.
I do appreciate that. Thank you. I just, with budget coming up on Thursday and rumors of cuts coming, I hate to give money back if I don't have to. So we'll open it up to members of council for questions on this, and then we'll move the 2 motions at the end of questioning. Member council questions. Councilor Danlock.
Thank you, Mayor Stewart. Actually more of a compliment as opposed to a question. Anytime you get a surplus, it's always a good news story. It's not too big a surplus, which is an issue sometimes. It's not too small a surplus. It's a nice number. I know this past year administration has done a great job, in my opinion, I think shared by council, of balancing staffing needs among COVID. As Mayor Stewart mentioned a moment ago, we had visions of possibly having a deficit situation and it's actually a surplus. And that all has to do with, I think, how administration juggled staffing issues and COVID issues and all kinds of things that, and did, I think, a very good job to get us where we are financially from this past year. So Mr. Dowler, and to your people in finance and everybody else, and Mr. Schwartz, all the city staff, great job. This is a good news story, as Mayor Stewart mentioned, and I'm very happy we are having a great discussion on a surplus, not a deficit, which it could have been a few months ago, as we had feared. So this is great news. Thank you, Mayor Stewart.
Thank you. Councillor Stout, followed by Councillor Van Newkirk.
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, I agree. It's excellent, great news, good news story. Excellent work by and management by administration, Mr. Dowler, Mr. DeBlanco, Mr. Schwartz. I think this reflects well on the efforts that have been made. I did have a couple of questions. However, can we? I'm just looking at attachment 4 on page 31 of 49. The notable underages that you referred to, the Kendall Regional Recreation Centre roof repair and the 2020 neighbourhood renewal program. So those came in at 18% under budget and 30% under budget, and so total of $700,000-800,000. I guess you're the wrong person. I guess, Mr. DeBlanco, you're the wrong person to ask why those came in but under budget. But am I reading that correctly? Those were on time, complete, and 18 and 30% under budget. Is that all correct?
To Councillor Stout, based on the preliminary numbers, once again, we're in the process of validating that they are in fact the final numbers. Yes, your assessment of -18 and -30 is correct.
Thank you. Okay, so council decision to push ahead with the 2020 neighbourhood renewal program instead of deferring it for another year is definitely vindicated. Then that's on budget and 30% under. On time, 30% under budget. I'm really happy to see that one. And I wanted to ask just quickly on the same. A few lines further down, there's communications upgrade at pump houses, and that's budgeted at 70,000. It's come in at 100% under budget, so no money was spent. I am assuming that was cancelled.
To Councillor Stout, I believe that project is complete, and the actual year-to-date should be a dollar amount there. I believe the dollars spent are lumped into a different program. Once again, part of the validation process that'll get broken out for the April report.
Okay, thank you. All right, so that'll be adjusted when we get there. Okay, because all the others, when you're transferring reserves, I see in a budget carry forward column. So I assume that project has not been completed and is going forward to next year. to next financial year, but a lot of the others have finished on time and under budget. So it's if I'm reading that correctly, and the same as the first two, the Ken Nickel roof repair and the neighborhood renewal program. So the capital expenditures look really good. I'm very pleased to see this report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stout. Councillor Van Newkirk, followed by Councillor Barnhart.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, a good report for sure. I guess the piece that I'm looking forward to will be kind of the last piece of the RFD there on page 23. At this time, a $1.2 million operating surplus is projected. Administration will bring forward recommendations to council in April on how these funds should be utilized. Any recommendations will be informed by council's reserve policy and will involve administration reviewing the balances of all reserves and so forth. So, just looking forward to that process playing out and administration making some of those recommendations and coming back. Just a question. Where or the timing in April that they're referring to, would that be the budget alignment in April? Is that what's being referred to there?
To Councillor Van Newkirk, yes. The report that will come in April will be for the consolidated audited financial statements that will give the final surpluses, and either before or following, I can't remember when we have that scheduled, there will be the final budget amendment for 2021, as well as the setting the tax rate bylaw.
Yeah. And I guess my point is that all those things had to occur concurrently because, should there be any additional money needed to 2021 or allocation be, suggested by administration to go one way or another with that, we are going to need that whole picture. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Van Newkirk. Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mr. DeBlanco, for the excellent report and the excellent outcome of the work this year. My question started out to be around the MOST grant. The mayor asked that question, and your answer regarding some of the areas where you would have definitely spent more, one of them was childcare. And when I look on attachment 1, I believe that childcare is under family services, and it looks like we're underspent there, not overspent. And again, I know that there's many other things in there. So I just wonder if you know, or if you don't have all the detail, I appreciate that. But I'm just curious where you might be able to find those additional dollars if the province does ask us to account for that spending. It's just too close for comfort for me. It's so close to the amount they gave us, and the surplus is around that amount. So that makes me worried. I do know that there are other examples, organizations that I know provincially are having to give back whatever they haven't spent by March 1st. So I'm just wondering, is childcare overspent, underspent, and what's happening in family services, or what happened in family services?
So through to Councillor Barnhart, the number you're alluding to is just on the expense side. My explanation to the mayor before was on the foregone revenue, so revenue not collected. So we were under budget on revenue significantly on both recreation and childcare. So those dollars can be utilized to offset that foregone revenue.
Okay, I wasn't aware that they would take that separate from the bottom line for the city. So I appreciate that if that's what they're going to do. They just looked at the surplus and said, you have a surplus, give us back that money. Is that not possible?
Once again, we're looking at all the expenses that were incurred directly because of COVID, adding those up, and then these are all independent situations that need to be addressed as far as filing the report and spending of the dollars by March 31st.
Okay. Well, I certainly hope that we do not have to give it back, because certainly is it's good to have that surplus, but it's by no means, we're not flush. We have lots of needs. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, seeing no further requests for questions of clarification, we'll move to some motions. Is there a member of council willing to move that council receive the 2020 year-end financial report as information? Councillor Stout.
So moved, your worship.
Discussion on the motion. Councillor Stout, did you want to speak? Councillor Barnhart? No. Okay. Seeing no further requests to speak, call question. All in favor? That carries unanimously. Appreciate that. Is there a member of council willing to move that council approve the carry forward of budget dollars from the 2020 to the 2021 budget for those items identified in attachment 5? Councillor Danlock.
So moved, your worship. Thank you.
Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all in favor? And that carries unanimously. Appreciate that. Once again, Mr. Blanco, great news story. Appreciate the highlights and looking forward to April and seeing exactly where we landed with the audited. Thank you very much. Which brings us to item 8C, tax penalty deferral. Mr. Blanco, is that you too, or is that Mr. Dollar?
That's me again, yes.
That's you again. Well, happy to have you. Floor is yours again.
All right, thank you. So with regards to the property tax deferral program, at the December 8th regular council meeting, council directed admin to look into the number of property tax and utility bill penalties being assessed for 2020, given the approval of the deferral program to provide information on effectiveness of those measures, and if people and businesses were still in need of them, provide recommendations to extend or implement measures, and provide recommendations to ensure that the penalty process is aligned with the intent of the deferral program. In response to this notice of motion, admin analyzed both current and arrears penalties imposed in 2020 and the 2 prior years and concluded on the effectiveness and if there is a need for further measures. Admin also reviewed the process on penalty dates and its alignment with the deferral program. It's admin's understanding that the intent of this program was to provide immediate financial relief from a taxation perspective for those hardest hit by COVID-19. Shifting the due date for taxes from June 30th to September 30th eased the burden of payment on this current 2020 balance for property taxes. The city's property tax tax penalty bylaw had penalty dates set for 30, 90, and 150 days after tax notices had been imposed for penalty amounts on the current year balance of 6%, 3%, and 3% respectively. This bylaw also had penalty dates set for arrears balances, which includes all outstanding amounts regardless of the year, for January 1st and April 1st. In order to align the penalties process with the deferral program, admin brought forward an amendment to this tax penalty bylaw to include verbiage unless otherwise directed by council. What this allowed administration to do is shift the penalty dates 90 days as well to align with the 90-day deferral on taxes, which can be seen outlined in the attachment on table A. Each penalty date on current balances was deferred 90 days, as I just stated, as the 150-day penalty on current year balances would be deferred into a future year, which would actually be February 1st of 2021. It was waived entirely as there's no current balance due yet in 2021. As part of the analysis, we looked at penalties on 2020 taxes. To determine the effectiveness of the deferral program, admin separated each type of penalty into 2 categories, current and arrears, and performed analytics on each. The key indicator of the effectiveness being penalties on current balances. However, the finding on arrears balances is also worth noting, especially considering if further measures are required. On current balances, I'll draw your attention to table B, which is page 39 of 49. Administration compared the amount of penalties assessed at the 30, 90, and 150-day intervals to both 2019 and 2018. The expectation is if the program was effective, the amount of penalties assessed would either be comparable or decrease. The data shows that in 2020, there was a significant decrease in the amount of penalties imposed on current balances. Admin was only required to record approximately half the penalties it does in a normal year, which would indicate the deferral program was a large success. Performing analysis on the arrears balances, which would be December 31st, once again to 2 prior years, which is table C. If the ratio of current balances had substantially increased compared to prior years, it would be an indicator that the program was not as effective as intended and further measures may be required. As the outstanding balance on current years at December 31st, 2020 was the lowest of the 3 years, it's a good indicator that the deferral program was effective in easing the tax burden on ratepayers. Further, the overall arrears balance decreased from prior years, which is another indicator that taxpayers have been able to avoid penalties better in 2020 than in prior years. It's admin's opinion that the deferral measures approved by council were effective. Looking at alignment of the penalty dates, once again, drawing your attention to table A, the penalty dates were shifted for 90 days or in the one case waived entirely, whereas the arrears penalties were not. The rationale for this is that arrears balances include balances on all tax years, not just 2020, would include 2019, 2018, and prior years as well. A significant portion, 36% of penalties imposed on arrears balances are for the years prior to 2020. Non-payment of these particular balances would be unrelated to the hardships from COVID-19. As the intent of the deferral program was to ease the burden impacted by COVID-19 in the 2020 year, current balances, existing bylaw dates were used for arrears penalties. Admin feels that this approach does align and does not recommend extension or implementation of further measures. In spite of this, there are approximately 6 months from the due date, which would be June 30th, until the first arrears penalty date in a normal year, which would be January 1st of the following year. Should council feel that arrears penalty dates require further alignment with the intent of the program, an option is to shift the penalty date on the current 2020 portion of the arrears balances in a similar manner to current penalties. This would result in the 12% January 1st penalty being deferred until April 1st and the April 1st penalty being deferred until July 1st on the 2020 amount outstanding. It is worth noting that adjusting these dates would require some retroactive adjustments and some significant admin time to implement. Based on the analysis discussed above, the data does not support that this is required, and for that reason, admin has not brought this forward as a recommendation. The budget financial impact on the 2020 operating budget includes an estimate for tax penalty revenue in the amount of $420,000. As noted above, the deferral measures resulted in a significant reduction in penalties in the amount of $91,000. Although this produces an unfavorable variance in terms of the budget, the benefit of the residents' ability to pay their outstanding balances reduces the administrative burden on collection. Thank you. I can take any questions at this time.
Thank you very much, Mr. DeBlanco. This is also a good news report that our residents were able to get their taxes paid in a relatively more timely fashion than in previous years, and it's cut down on the deficiencies. So roughly, if I'm reading this math right, we're roughly about half of what we would normally be at this point in the year.
To the mayor, yes, that is correct.
Okay.
We collected approximately half of what we normally collect on current balances. So ratepayers were able to pay the balances better this year due to the measures than they would have even in prior non-COVID years.
So in my estimation, then I don't think we need to be adjusting any more for 2020. But the fact that 2021 at least is shaping up for the front half of 2021 to be the same dumpster fire that the last half of 2020 was. Does this data indicate that we should be looking at a similar program for 2021, or do we know yet?
To the mayor, that wasn't part of the scope of this analysis. Admin could come back with recommendations for the deferring for 21 if that be council's wish, but based on the analysis in this report, we don't recommend any other measures.
Okay, well, we'll just keep that one in the back of our pocket. We'll see how we run out into June here. We may come back and ask you to do that analysis, or I may come back and ask you to do that analysis and ask council to support me. But I'll open it up to questions from members of council. Councillor Stout.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thanks, Mr. DeBlanco. Yes, another good news report, I agree, by and large. Just wanted to ask you a quick question about Table C, because there's something that puzzles me about it, the aged receivables by year. And I think I know what it's telling me, if I'm reading it correctly. But what's confusing me is the first financial column where we've got amounts of $1.41, $1.46, and $1.51. I'm assuming we're not chasing people who owe us $1.41. So I'm assuming there must be some multiplier in there that I'm missing. Is that correct?
Through to Councillor Stout, yes, you're correct. That would be 1.41 million.
That'd be 1.4 million. And so does that represent that's the sum total of the amount owing?
That's correct.
So, and that again has declined in successive years, in fact, then from 2018, 19 and 20 through those years.
Yes, that is correct.
Great, thank you. I just wanted to check that I was understanding that correctly. Thanks. Can I ask another question?
Sure.
And then the other one I was interested to read was the in your conclusion there, budget financial impact. As noted above, the deferral measures result in a significant reduction in penalties in the amount of 91,000. So we collected 91,000 less dollars because we didn't apply as many penalties, and that's correct.
Yes, through to Councillor Stout, that is correct.
So and that obviously we're then $91,000 short in the budget, but that's because people have paid their bills rather than not paying them and then be assessed for penalties. So that's the point of the point of that penalty, is to encourage people to pay their bills, not to raise revenue. Am I correct?
Yes, through to Councillor Stout, that is correct. It is, although we're collecting less revenue from an admin's perspective, if any revenue we're going to collect is less, penalty revenue is the one we want to go with.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and that's an important principle I think we need to apply in other situations as well. Thank you.
Great. Seeing no further requests to speak, is there a member of council willing to move the motion that we accept this report as information? Councillor Danlock. Councillor Barnhart.
So moved, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? And that carries unanimously. Thank you very much, Mr. DeBlanco. Appreciate it tonight. That was a very effective program, so thankfully it did help. Brings us to item 8D, Yellowhead Regional Library appointment. I believe that's Ms. Winter.
Thank you, Worship. Through you to members of council and the public. The Yellowhead Regional Library Board is governed by a board of trustees whose structures, powers, and obligations are defined under the master membership agreement. The board is comprised of trustees appointed by each member municipality and school division. This evening, administration, the chair of the board, and the municipal library board is looking for support to appoint Robert Robertson as member of the Yellowhead Regional Library Board and Ms. Honey Pell as an alternate. This evening, administration is looking for council support. Thank you.
Appreciate that. So there are two recommendations before us tonight. We'll take them in each succession. So I'm going to look to Councillor Stout to make the motions, as he's our representative on the library board. Councillor Stout. You're on mute, buddy.
I never know when I'm on or off. It's a toggle switch. It confuses me. Yes, thank you, Worship. I was looking to make these motions anyway. So let's do the first one. Council approve the appointment of Robert Robinson as member of the Yellowhead Regional Library Board for a term to take effect immediately and expire in February 2024.
So move. Discussion on the motion.
I've known Mr. Robinson since I was appointed to the library board too, and I know he's extremely effective in the role, and he's very enthusiastic about taking on the new role at the regional library board. So I'm keen to see him go forward.
Thank you very much for speaking to the motion. Seeing no further requests to speak, all in favor? And that carries unanimously. And we have a second motion on the alternate. Councillor Stout.
Thank you, Worship. I move that council approve the reappointment of Honey Pell as alternate member of the Yellowhead Regional Library Board for a term to take effect immediately and expire in February 2024.
Thank you very much. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? And that carries unanimously and brings us to the conclusion of Yellowhead Regional Library Board appointments. Thank you very much, Ms. Winter. Appreciate that. Bringing us to item AD, notice of motion, Councillor Stowe Ball Diamonds. So as usual, we'll let Ms. Winter introduce it, and then the floor is yours, Councillor Stowe.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to Council. In accordance with the meeting procedures bylaw, once a notice of motion is made, it will be placed on the next regular meeting agenda in which the elected official who made the notice of motion is present and vote on whether the matter should proceed. At the February 9th, 2021 council meeting, Councillor Stowe made the following notice of motion: that in addition to the proposed 275 and 225 ball diamonds, council direct administration to provide council with an alternative capital cost estimate for the West Recreation site to include 300 and 225 ball diamonds. This evening, administration is looking at council on how they wish to proceed. Thank you.
Councillor Stowe, it's your motion. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Ms. Winter. Yeah, motion in front of us. I don't think I need to go over it again, do I?
Well, you have to make it, so yes.
I do? Okay, I formally have to speak it. Very well.
Have to speak the motion.
Okay, so I'm moving that in addition to the two proposed 275 foot and 225 foot ball diamonds, council direct administration to provide council with an alternative capital cost estimate for the West Recreation site that includes 300 foot and 225 foot ball diamonds. I'll apologize in advance for the excessive repeats of two. So I'm hopeful and confident that this motion will be straightforward and uncontroversial and thus gain the support of council. As you all know, the originally proposed design concept for the 4 new baseball diamonds on the 80-acre West Recreation site was for 4 baseball fields, each of 300 foot each. Since then, public engagement has shown that 2 of those fields would better fit the needs of minor ball players if they were 225 feet instead, and also that the other 2 fields would be adequately sized for adult play at 275 feet. However, since then, I have, and other councillors I think have heard also from slow pitch players who inform me that now a 300-foot field would be much better suited to their needs for slow pitch than a 275-foot one. Apparently, new bat technology has now rendered a 275-foot field less than ideal for slow pitch players, for slow pitch batters at least. And I think Councillor, of course, heard earlier this evening from the president of the Slow Pitch Association to essentially the same effect. I'm a believer in the principles of which we all also already discussed tonight in another context, of doing it right the first time and measuring twice but only cutting once, so you don't have to do it again. I also believe that when council exercises its power to spend public money on new facilities like this, that we should ensure that we are getting the best value, and do that by providing the greatest benefit to the maximum number of users. So if we can accommodate the needs of slow pitch players as well as other baseball groups, then we should try to do that in this case too. So for those reasons, I'd like council to be fully and completely informed of any and all extra costs that would be entailed by extending 2 of the proposed new baseball fields from 275 feet to 300 feet before we have to make a decision about which of those 2 options we're going to authorize for construction. So I'm asking you all to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Discussion on the motion. Okay, seeing none, I am going to speak against the motion for a number of reasons. One, we approved this in January, made the decision to put this out to tender. And I'm really afraid that this is going to add complexity to the RFP process. It's going to add a slowdown to the process to get this done. And as we found out from a number of other projects this evening, like we're up against the wall here, and I don't want to see this slow down. The other thing is I did look at the Canadian Slow Pitch Championship Canadian, their website, and there is only one category in men's slow pitch where you need a 300 foot to 375 foot diamond. The sweet spot seems to be 275 as a minimum to 300 or 325 for male, female, women's, co-ed, right from U14 up. So 275 seems to be the sweet spot. We seem to have accommodated those needs, and don't want to further complicate the RFP process, and I don't want to further slow this program down. So I'm going to vote against your motion tonight for those reasons, and encourage council to do the same. Councillor Mungas-Swain.
Yeah, two questions, one for Councillor Stout and one for administration. First up, Councillor Stout, we approved the concept. We put $1.2 million towards this back in September last year, and I get that the numbers were there around. It was roughly at the 300 foot diamonds. You said that you've had some engagement with slow pitch and yes. Sorry, with I'm losing my train of thought here. You've had the engagement there with them. I guess my question is, we heard from Paul about the engagement that he has had with those user groups, similar to the question that Mayor Stewart had. So I'm just curious about why this is coming up now after the fact. Why wasn't the 300 piece highlighted earlier? And I'm just curious if you had in any of your discussions, because I didn't have any of your discussions about why this is coming up now versus within the engagement process.
To answer that, yeah, I believe this came up now because the concept as originally floated for the public engagement, it was the original concept with 300 feet fields, which was then circulated on Facebook and other electronic media and had some support from the slow pitch guys. But the first inclination that the fields were to be truncated to 275, or that's the wrong word, but that 275 foot baseball diamonds were on was when we saw the revised concept at the January 26th council meeting. So that was when I started receiving comments from the slow pitch people about a longer pitch being required, because as far as they were concerned, I think that that they didn't realize that this was going to happen.
So we heard from Paul when he presented at the end of January there that the user groups had been engaged, right?
Yeah.
So I took that to be meaning that they, as three of the bowl associations, that they had been engaged, and administration can correct me if I'm wrong. So I guess my concern is, where does this stop, right? If we go ahead with this motion, then another user group may come back and say, hey, I thought, I was all good at 275, but now you're looking at 300 and this is not good enough for me. I want you to bring forward a notice of motion to bring it back to 275. So that's what I don't understand in the process is where's the engagement gone? Like presumably we've talked to all three user groups and the work that Paul and his team did, and that's where that plan came out of. And so one user group looks like they don't like the plan. So if we go forward and potentially change that or investigate changing that, then there's another user group come back and challenge that. So that's the concern that I have around that. I don't know if you have a follow-up comment on that, Martin.
No, my follow-up comment would simply be that it seems to me that a 300 foot pitch will suit both the 275 and 300 foot users.
Okay, so that's not what administration put in front of us. So let me go to administration quickly, and I don't know if it doesn't look like Mr. Stewart is here. So Mike, I'll give you hopefully you can do your best here. Could you just confirm the engagement that occurred with the user groups prior to that presentation being put in front of us on the 26th? I guess I'm surprised that this is coming back to us after we've already approved it.
Sure, I can talk about the engagement. You're right, the original concept called for 300 foot. Paul then went and worked with the 3 user groups. 2 of them were significantly more engaged than the third. When they looked at the allocation specifically regarding minor ball, the decision was made that the 2 275s and the 2 225s would be the most effective. By building 300s and putting minor ball on that, it's going to require temporary fencing if they're going to utilize those diamonds. So between the 3 that were reached out to the user groups, the decision was made that the 2 275s and the 2 225s were effective for all the user groups when they looked at allocation.
Thank you. Can you just speak to the timing? So if this motion passes, and we're going to talk about timing of this further down the road, but what would that do potentially to the RFP, that process for the ball diamonds out in the West 80 acres?
Yeah, Paul can speak to this more directly, and maybe Mike Dowler wants to weigh in. The conversation I did have with him today is there is a possibility that it could delay it. It likely will increase the cost. However, it's not impossible to pull this off. The issue or the difficulty that I think we would have is we would need to go back to the user groups and wonder why we agreed on 275s, 225s, and now we're talking 2 300s. And I think you'll find out that it's not going to be the best solution.
And I guess that's my point. And Councillor Stout, I get if folks are approaching you and saying, hey, this isn't right, let's get it, let's figure out a different way. But from the information that administration has presented to us, that this is the best solution based on all the user groups. So that's where my challenge initially with it is. Last question for CAO Schwartz is just around if we've got any other further plans to look at other opportunities for recreation in and around our area. I wonder if you could just speak at a very high level to that. It was briefly mentioned at the end on that January meeting with Mr. Schroeder. So just some thoughts around some other options that we're potentially looking at.
Yes, we've had regular meetings with our regional partners, and I know what you're alluding to is a discussion we had several months ago that isn't public at this point in time. But we're pretty optimistic that we're not finished building ball facilities in our region. Mr. Dowler, did you want to add anything to that? Okay.
So that's it for me, Your Worship. I'll see what other councillors have to say on this matter before weighing in. Thanks.
Appreciate that. Councillor Danlock, followed by Councillor Van Newkirk. You're on mute, Councillor.
Sorry, my darn computer buttons. I apologize for that. I do share also the concerns already spoken regarding timing and having made commitments already. I've been getting some feedback as well from people in the slow pitch community. Currently, the 2 diamonds at Colonial that they currently play on are approximately 275 feet already. And I've been getting conflicting information on what is appropriate for slow pitch. Mayor Stewart mentioned a moment ago, having read a report, that 275 is a reasonable size for slow pitch diamonds. So I am concerned about procedure and how it slows down our plans to make this thing happen. I believe firmly from talking to Paul as well before the January meeting that the user groups were engaged, and the engagement got us to our proposal that council voted on, and having 2 275s and 2 225 diamonds. So I understand and wanted to make sure all user groups are properly heard and looked after in terms of doing it right the first time. I agree, but I do think the the motion brought to us when we voted on has already done that in public opinion with the user groups. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a moment. So I would want to make sure we do everything we possibly can for all the user groups involved. But I do think the presenter earlier this evening from the Slow Pitch Association had the right idea of having the 2 longer diamonds on the south and 2 shorter diamonds across the north. That does make sense to me. It wouldn't affect the cost of them if they say at 275 each. So I think that can be considered. I think it would be a very good suggestion, but regrettably, I'm leaning towards not supporting the motion at this point in the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Danlock. Councillor Van Newkirk.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Along the similar trains of thought, how we got here is by administration understanding the user groups, understanding allocations, having the clipboard and the scheduling in front of them, understanding what resources, as in what diamonds and what sizes, are all available to all the user groups. You know, presumably they would have looked at historical usage, who uses what diamonds when and for how long and what timing, and presumably any historical concerns with the sizing of the current diamonds would have been considered had any of those concerns been brought up by any of the user groups. For me, I don't have the information, the operational information that I would need, and nor should I be considering that, I don't think, to make this decision and support the motion. Administration is looking after the operational aspects of what we're doing. They're doing the engagement. They're meeting with the groups. If when the opportunities arise for those groups to engage, we can hope that they're engaging. And I believe that administration has been doing an increasingly better job over the last few years of catching up with these groups if maybe they missed an opportunity. So if I had heard from administration that they had missed engagement with Slow Pitch, then I would be inclined to direct them to go back and engage some more. But I didn't hear that. I heard that the engagement had happened. So for me, the engagement occurred, the diamond configuration and sizing was put in front of council. We've looked at that. There's been a budget approved, and that's where we move forward with. I think this notice of motion comes too late in the game, and it's not where we need to be right now. So thank you.
Okay, I see Councillor Munkoff, Swain, Councillor Danlock, your hands are back up, so we'll put you to round two because Councillor Hendricks hasn't had a chance to speak in round one. We'll let him go next.
Thank you, Worship. Just the one question that did seem to get raised during this last conversation was the tournaments. We had heard that as a result of the distances, the dimensions, that these fields cannot be used for tournaments. I wonder if the administration could just speak to that, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Councillor Hendricks. I'm not specifically aware of what the requirements are to host tournaments. I do know there is the ability, because Mr. Suter shared it with me, that if you move to within the area, there's enough available diamonds to book that you could host a tournament. You just couldn't have them. We're not set up like the city of Leduc that has a hub where they've got the four. Devon's the same thing, has the hub, because that's an offering that they want to provide their community. We're not set up that way. So whether there's a minimum, unfortunately, I don't know the answer to that.
Okay, seeing no further requests from councillors that haven't spoken in round one, we will move to round two. Councillor Danlock, followed by Councillor Munkoff.
Thank you, Mayor Stewart. In my original comments, I lost my train of thought for a moment there, and it came back to me now a moment ago, and that was just to echo a previous comment in that the process was done, in my opinion, properly. Got us to our vote we had taken recently on this project, and so we need to trust the process that we have all been following all along the way. And as Councillor Van Newkirk mentioned a moment ago, the notice of motion does come rather late in the game, and so that was my last parting thought for my first comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Munkoff Swain. And then seeing no further requests, we'll call the question after that.
So thank you, Your Worship. I'm torn on this because I've always said that I want information, and simply Councillor Stout's motion is to give us information. And Mr. Schwartz said that it's not great timing wise, but it can be done, right? So that's on one half. The other half is we're not trying to build. Like I'd love to build the 4 300 diamonds and turn it into a slow pitch piece, right? But what we heard from the user groups is that we need to share these across the board. We're not building a space for a tournament for slow pitch. Eventually, I'd love to have that somewhere in Beaumont or in the surrounding area, but right now that's not the vision. I would to have the tournament. So on the one hand, we're going through this engagement process, and maybe the user group wasn't as engaged as much as needed to be, and maybe not aware that we were considering changing to 300. On the other hand, it's just looking for information, and I'd hate to make a decision that our CAO is saying that is not going to have too much of an impact on schedule. I hate to make a decision without having that information. So I'm surprised myself. I'm actually leaning towards supporting this notice of motion to get that information, and presumably that it can be part of the RFP package. And so I guess that the last question I had for Mr. Schwartz is just confirming that the RFP package has not gone out. Is that right on the timing for this?
Yes, that's correct. It's in the final stages of its design and will be out before March 1st.
Okay, and so presumably it's, we don't need to give them every single spec. Presumably we can build into that RFP 275 or 300. I realize it's not as simple as that, but the space is there. Is that a fair comment? Yeah.
I'm sorry about that, Councilor.
No, presumably it's not. So my comment was, if the RFP hasn't gone out, presumably we can just add something. If this motion passes, we just add something in that RFP that looks at the concept at 275 or 300 and see what comes back from the RFPs.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so with that, I hate the fact that it's late in the game. I hate the fact that we've had a process, but I want to stick with my gut of always getting information here, and so I will be supporting the motion here. So those are my comments. Thank you.
I still disagree with you. What we're doing is complicating the process, not gathering information to give us a better decision on a decision we already made. So I'm still opposed. Councillor Van Newkirk, and then we'll call the question.
Yeah, what I'm trying to decide now is if there's a motion to follow this around redoing the engagement. We met with all the user groups. We talked to the user groups. We considered the allocation of the diamonds. We considered historical usage. We considered historical concerns. We would have considered the feedback that they gave. So what I'm trying to decide right now is I think through this motion is if I make a motion to redo the engagement, because that feels like what we need to do. If council's coming along and second guessing the engagement that administration is doing all the time, what are we doing? That's what I would have to say to that. So, I hear you, Councillor Monkoff-Swain, around getting information, but I also understand an RFP process is something that you have to understand what you're bidding on, and you can provide price A and price B. I know those are options that can go out there, but I'm actually less concerned about price A and price B than I am about circumventing a process that we've directed administration to undertake, and administration has met with user groups to do. So, that's where I'm at, and second guessing that process, I think, is an important thing to think about as members of council vote on this. Thank you.
Okay, so I said we were going to close debate, and people have said their piece for over 2 rounds. So we're going to close debate and call the question. All those in favor, vote aye. All those opposed, vote no. And that motion is defeated 4-3. Mayor Stewart, Councillor Daniluk, Councillor Hendricks, and Councillor Van Newkirk opposed. Councillor Barnhart, Councillor Stout, and Councillor Monkoff-Swain in favor. Okay, brings us to, hang on, where did my sheet go? Brings us to bylaw 999-21, operating line of credit.
Thank you to the mayor and council. So this bylaw is being brought forth within the parameters of the upcoming investment policy, which will be presented to council in 2021. Admin is seeking to improve the city's treasury management practices. Part of this will include investment strategies for idle reserve balances. These strategies will increase the return the city receives on its reserve balances. However, this will reduce the city's liquid cash available. In reducing this available liquid cash, the city will require an operating line of credit available to address any potential unforeseen operating expenditures outside projected annual cash flow. It's admin's intent to manage the city's treasury to not incur this bank indebtedness. However, its availability offsets operating risks of having unavailable cash. This item is before council to approve a temporary borrowing bylaw, bylaw 999-21. Operating line of credit bylaw is for $10 million that may be drawn throughout the year in the event it's required for short-term cash flow operating purposes. A temporary borrowing bylaw has a maximum term of 3 years. To ensure that this temporary bylaw is always in effect, a bylaw amendment will be presented prior to December 31st, 2024. Budget financial impact, as stated above in the analysis/rationale section, the availability of this short-term operating funding will enable admin with the ability to yield a greater return on idle funds. The city's cash balance typically sits between 25 and 45 million at any given time, which we had a favorable interest rate on our checking account with our old bank that wasn't necessarily tied to prime, which is why this is coming forward. We don't necessarily have that favorable interest rate anymore, so we would like to be able to improve our treasury management. Yielding 0.25% higher on the checking than what we get on our checking account will increase our investment income by approximately $50,000 a year. Conversely, should we have to require bank indebtedness of, say, $1 million, interest would incur at approximately $1,400 a month. This time, I'll take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. DeBlanco. Is there a member of council willing to move first reading of bylaw 99-21, operating line of credit borrowing bylaw? Councilor Daniluk.
So move, your worship. Thank you.
Okay, appreciate that. So we'll open it up to questions to administration. Councilor Daniluk, followed by Councilor Van Newkirk.
Thank you, Mayor Stewart. Thank you, Mr. DeBlanco, for the explanation. It makes perfectly good sense to me. I sometimes ask this question when I see just the need for it. Is there any reason why we shouldn't do this? Is there any downside to doing this? I read through the information and it made perfectly good sense to me. And I don't see any downside, but is there something I haven't thought of that could be a downside to doing this? I see none myself, but can you offer anything that a reason why we shouldn't do this? Thank you.
Through to Councilor Daniluk, if we were to go into bank indebtedness, it would count against our debt limits and debt service limits, but until we actually draw on it, there's no downside in doing this. This is a risk mitigation factor, make sure we have cash available once we start implementing some better investment and treasury management practices with our idle funds.
Risk management makes sense to me. Thank you for explanation, Mr. DeBlanco. I look forward to supporting it.
Councilor Barnhart.
Thank you, Mayor. And to Mr. DeBlanco, would there have to be any action taken to draw on that line of credit? Like, with council be aware every time there's a withdrawal from there?
Through to Councilor Barnhart, admin would likely keep council up to date on if there would be a draw, but having the bylaw available, from my understanding, allows admin to draw on it if needed.
And if I'm not mistaken, the bylaw allows you to open up the line of credit, but it doesn't restrict what you can use it for, or does it?
Through to Councilor Barnhart, this is for operating purposes only. It's, like I said, it's an operating line of credit.
Okay, and so it would be something that council would be kept abreast of, so that it would not be used for any purposes that council isn't aware of.
Through to Councilor Barnhart, that's correct. It would, any expenditures would be within the approved budget already. This is simply just having available liquid cash if we had our reserve funds tied up in other investments.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Okay, seeing no further requests to speak, we'll call the question. All those in favor of first reading? And that carries unanimously. Is there a member of council willing to move second reading of bylaw 99-21, operating line of credit borrowing bylaw? Councilor Barnhart.
So moved, your worship.
Thank you. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all in favor? And that carries unanimously. And so I will move that council give unanimous consent to move to third reading of bylaw 999-21, operating line or credit borrowing bylaw. All those in favor? Nope. That motion is defeated, so third reading will be deferred to the next council meeting by a vote of 5-2. Councilors Hendricks and Stout opposed. All others in favor. All right, so that brings us to councilor inquiries and reports. We'll start with inquiries and move to reports. Do members of council have a question for administration this evening? Councilor Van Newkirk, followed by Councilor Moncosme.
No, thank you. I wasn't watching who then came up first, but just wanted to have a question of administration around overall construction timeline for all the projects that we have going on in Beaumont. We're getting to the point where there's a whole bunch approved and there's a whole bunch of moving pieces, a whole bunch of RFPs. Many user groups are engaged and wanting to understand how construction season is going to impact and when new facilities will come online. And there's quite a few questions that are arising in the community around that. Just wondering if we can get an update, or when we might be able to get an update of the big picture of what is going to happen when in Beaumont for the construction of the approved projects in the 2021 capital budget. Thank you.
Mr. Dallard, do you want to take this? Do you want me to start? I know you're pulling together that master project list, which I believe we committed tonight to having back on March 16th.
Yeah, exactly that. So Councillor Van Newkirk, I think given the earlier conversation this evening around the March 16th Committee of the Whole, administration would endeavor to bring forward a more comprehensive overview of all the capital projects that are going on. Timing related to those projects, milestones that we're looking at right now, and hopefully be able to reflect on some of the risks associated with those projects in terms of what we're going to be keeping our eye on that might jeopardize our ability to deliver some of those projects. So hopefully you'll be able to see that on March the 16th in its entirety.
Just a follow-up, Your Worship. Yeah, so there's been a lot of conversations with a lot of groups and with a lot of conversations with council to get us to the point where we can get everything on a schedule. And I know that one of the directions council has given since the beginning of the construction season is that we would wish that the ball diamonds on the West 80 would be up and running before the ball diamonds are removed for the turf field construction. And that's been a pretty consistent message from council through to administration. So I'll really be looking to, to that update to understand what after you've had a look at all of the pieces together, what that impact is going to look like. And, if that wish of council and the residents in Beaumont is going to be realistic or not. I sure hope it is, but if it turns out to not be as realistic as we'd once hoped, let's get that information out in front of us. That's where I'm at this point. The community has spoke a lot around those concerns. We've heard probably individually and collectively from many of the affected user groups as everyone is looking forward to all the new stuff. And I guess the last thing I would say is that we're going to need some patience from everybody because, there's a lot of uncertainty that's in front of everything that's going to happen in 2021 for construction in Beaumont. So yeah, looking forward to March 16th Committee of the Whole. Thank you.
Yep.
If I could just build off of that, Councillor Van Newkirk, we're under the same understanding. And we've been planning this all along that the West Diamonds would be in place before the two are removed. I know on Friday a post went out from the city that was incorrect. That was an error on our part, and we're working to correct that. Another thing that's happening in the background, because there are some risks on the ability to pull that off, is Mr. Suter and his group have been working with the user groups to look at alternative ways to allocate so that their season will not be impacted if for some reason the construction does not line up and there has to be a state where the diamonds on the west side are not ready, but the multi-use field needs to start ripping up turf. So he's already had those conversations. So we've got a couple irons in the fire here to be able to pull this off without interrupting anybody's schedule.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's important. Thank you for those comments.
Councillor Monka-Swain, followed by Councillor Hendricks.
Yeah, mine was more of a comment to tee up something. So maybe if Councillor Hendricks has got some questions, then we could go there and then lead into my to the video here.
Fair enough. I will come back to you, Councillor Hendricks.
Hi, Your Worship. Thank you. My question is related to what used to be called Rack 1, Kinnickel 1, and the arena, the physical ice piece, and whether or not it's regulation size. There's been a lot of talk over the years that in fact it isn't. I don't know if anybody's actually put a tape to that rink. I like to have it measured, and perhaps and then can come back to us with whatever that outcome is. Typically, a regulation rink would be highly sought after if in fact we're deficient. And if that's the case, we're currently in the middle of doing some renos and we have some money. So if that's the case, maybe it all comes together and we could clear up a deficiency that apparently has been around since about 1975. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hendricks. I did speak with Paul, and thank you for the heads up today. I truly appreciate that. And he does concur with you that one is bigger than the other, but he didn't have the figures offhand. So I will get those and I will send them out, and then we can go from there.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Dunlop.
Thank you, Mayor Stewart. I do appreciate just a quick piggyback on CEO Schwartz's comments a few moments ago. The post went out on Friday. Thank you for recognizing that went out in error. I was surprised when I saw it too. I had numerous people contact me over the weekend regarding that post, as you can well imagine. So just if you can give us an idea, Mr. Schwartz, Mr. Brzezowski, how the communication will be in the next few days to rectify that oversight in terms of communication to the user groups and emphasizing our anticipation, as you mentioned, construction, hopefully lining up together as we anticipate. What is the plan to kind of assuage the concerns of the user groups who saw that post that went out, as you mentioned, inadvertently? Thank you very much.
Yeah, I spoke with Mr. Brzezowski this afternoon, and he's given some thought to how we can alleviate what we should send out and when. So we'll have something together by tomorrow.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And so the user groups, I'm sure they'll appreciate the clarity. Thank you.
No further requests. Councillor Monka-Swain.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship, and I think most or all of us here on this call are aware that we entered into the Regional Transit Commission, and so we did put together a nice little video that highlights what this is all about. So I would appreciate if Ms. Winter could kind of tee that up and play that for us and any residents watching in here. It's very, very exciting stuff. So if we could just play that video now, that'd be great. Thank you. I can't hear any sound. I'm not sure if that's just me or not. I saw our mayor who looked great, but I haven't heard any sound. So I wonder if we could try to tee that up with sound.
No sound.
Ms. Winter, you're still on mute.
You guys get the picture anyway. It's a great video. I'm sure everyone will watch it in their own time. I don't know if we'll get a chance to rectify it, but I know we did send it out on a social media post as well. So yeah, I'm not sure we need to go back if we can or not, but yeah, I just wanted to bring it forward here.
Councillor Montcalf-Swain, can we take a shot at this? Like, I think you're trying to show it right now, right?
No, I'm not showing it. This is yeah. But when we share it, you've got to click include audio in the share. So maybe if we give that another shot.
Why don't you let us take another shot at this? Let's see if we can work the bug out, and we'll share it at the next council meeting.
No worries. Yeah.
We'll have a look at this at the next council meeting. Are there any other statements that council wishes to make this evening before we move on to the CAO's report? Okay, seeing none, CAO, floor is yours.
Sure, I'll be brief. Want to talk a little bit about the numbers, the COVID numbers. In the last 24 hours, we had 1 additional case and 4 more people recovered. Our active cases are sitting at 33, and thankfully there's been no additional deaths. It is alarming. In the Edmonton region, Beaumont for the last 3 weeks has been the #1, the highest in the zone for cases per 100,000. Our rate is 188 per 100,000. Edmonton is second with 80 cases per 100,000, and Parkland County is third with 66. Now, our population, it works against us, as you can imagine, with the ratios. So, a couple cases for Beaumont is probably the same impact of a couple hundred in the city of Edmonton. But it does indicate that we're still at a high number. Now, circulating through the community, I think our community is doing a fantastic job of abiding by the measures. I think what we have in place is successful and is going to get us there in the long run. But the message I just want to leave is we're not there yet, even though we're talking about opening up and getting a little bit more freer, but we've still got to maintain that social distancing. Dr. Hinshaw, as I reported last week, made the commitment that they were going to use all 3 weeks of this stage 1 opening to assess, because they're not just looking at case rates. The case rates have actually plateaued. They've stopped going down. So that in itself is alarming. The hospital stays have gone down significantly, but those as well have plateaued. As well, the Alberta, the reproduction factor is above 1. Now, we talked about that. When it's above 1, it means this thing's growing. It's not getting smaller. So she made the commitment that they would take up until March 1st, make the decision on what stage 2 would look like, and then roll it out 7 days later. Well, she clarified today that's not necessarily the case. So to her point is that the commitment they made was more to the municipalities and to, say, restaurant owners, to give them a week's notice so we could get our ducks in order before we start opening. So she changed that position a bit today and said that where she can provide 7 days notice, they will provide it, but they can't guarantee it. So what that means is, we've seen some inconsistency with the province. We all know that. I know they're doing the best they can, but we're preparing for, another Friday surprise perhaps. But the message, what I want to leave with is we still got to maintain that physical distancing, wash our hands, and abide by all the public health measures. Mary or somebody mentioned earlier, provincial budget's coming down on Thursday on the 25th. So we will watch that and have a summary that we'll be able to share with council and with the public. And today we had a sort of a very quickly put together meeting with our member of parliament, Mike Lake. We were giving him some updates on some of the government relations stuff and some of the economic development stuff that we've got going on here. Mike has been involved from the beginning and regularly touches base with us, and has also been instrumental in helping connect us with some federal connections, which Rob has then been pursuing. So that was a really high energy meeting today. I thought we had set aside 30 minutes, and I think we took almost an hour. Seemed to be very interested. As we all know, Mike Lake loves Beaumont. So we had a really good discussion. So as far as any other items, I didn't have any to share. Rob, were you going to share anything? You're good? You're on mute, Rob. Okay.
I'm good right now. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So that brings us to the end of CAO's update to item 12A, correspondence. And I'd like to bring this one to particular note to council's attention. We received it from our MP, Mike Lake, and apparently on December 11th, 2020, the House of Commons voted by unanimous consent to adopt the following motion that given the alarming rate of suicide in Canada constitutes a national health crisis, that the House call on the government to take immediate action in collaboration with our provinces to establish a national suicide prevention hotline that consolidates all suicide crisis numbers into one easy to remember 3-digit 988 hotline that is accessible to all Canadians. I find it significant that it was passed unanimously in the House of Commons. Mike, our MP, Mike Lake, has asked municipalities within his riding to pass a similar motion. So I would like to move that motion and ask council to consider passing that. So I'd like to move that motion and add to the end and further direct administration to prepare a letter of support on behalf of Beaumont Council and forward to the Honorable Mike Lake, PC MP, Edmonton, Wetaskiwin, in support of this initiative, and perhaps we could follow that on with some correspondence with the province to help them out as well. So I will make that motion and I will open it up to members of council to see if they will support that. Discussion on the motion. Councilor Barnhart.
Thank you very much for bringing this forward, Mayor, because I couldn't support it more. It's important to make all means available to people that are suffering from mental illness, especially now, and having an easy to remember number. I was very pleased to see that it was across the board. Everyone supported this at federally, so I think we should as well. So all in favor.
Thank you very much, Councilor. Councilor Danlock.
Thank you, Your Worship. I cannot agree more. Also, I support this motion wholeheartedly. I think it's great. It was a nonpartisan vote. House of Commons, get this done. Anything Beaumont can do to support this initiative, welcome from my perspective. So thank you for bringing it to us, Ms. Mayor Stewart. Thank you for the motion. I look forward to supporting it. Thank you very much.
Very much. All right, seeing no further requests to speak, call a question. All in favor? And that carries unanimously. Thank you very much to my council for supporting this very important initiative. Do any members of council have a notice of motion they wish to make this evening? Okay, seeing none, can I get a motion to move into closed session? Councilor Danlock. Discussion on the motion.
Thank you.
Thank you. All in favor? That carries unanimously. So we're going to move into closed motion, but just to members of the public, we just had an economic update or development update in closed session. There is no business arising from closed session, no motions to be made or business to be discussed. So therefore, that brings us to the end of the meeting. Once again, thank you, council. It was a great discussion tonight. Appreciate all the work that you do to prepare to come to these meetings, prepared to debate the way you have. Administration, once again, bang up job. Appreciate all the time and effort it goes into putting these reports together, and appreciative of the work you do. And hopefully we can continue on and finish strong as we finish out this term over the next 8 months. Okay, that being the end of the meeting, I will now call adjournment. I'll see everybody in 2 weeks. Stay safe.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.